I'm so excited for this interview and so excited for this book. But before we jump into the book, before we jump into the the whole shenanigan, would you like to take your time to introduce yourself to the audience for people who are not familiar with your work? Maybe just tell us a bit about your artistic journey and who you are.
Yeah, so my name's Ashleigh Izienicki, but I go by Missupacey online. Um, it's always funny when I try to explain where my name came from because everybody's like, "Oh, what's Missupacey?" It's actually my dog's name was Upacey when I was
Oh,
growing up. And so I made like a DeviantArt account that was Miss Upacey and it stuck. I didn't mean for it to stick. It's just you had to come up with a creative username. And it was just, now it's forever Miss Upacey. And a lot of people ask how to pronounce it, and that's how you pronounce it. But I honestly don't mind. Whatever you feel like saying, just say it. It's okay. It's a weird name. I'm a freelance illustrator that lives in California. I've lived all over the west of the United States, but now I'm in California. I own lots of animals, and I like drawing dinosaurs in my free time. And but otherwise, I draw hot ladies.
perfect. We love that. So I want to know how your day-to-day inspires you. But before we talk about that, can you tell us a bit about like growing up as an artist, like some of your early inspirations and what made you decide, you know what, I think I want to be an artist. Like, can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so from a very early age, I really liked drawing, but it wasn't like my main passion. I actually wanted to be like a paleontologist growing up. And then I wanted to do like CSI crime scene investigations. I got into that for
Ooh.
a long time. I was going to go to college for that and everything. But then I realized, seeing dead bodies every day is probably not good for my mental health. So I took a step back from that. But I had to look at my life and figure out like what would make me happy for the rest of my life. And so I went with art because I did it all the time. It brought me joy. It was a hobby, but I was okay with making it into something that I could do for a living forever. So my biggest inspirations, I really wanted to work for Disney for a long time. I think everybody goes through that phase. Like they watch a bunch of anime. I did that too. Middle school, that was my whole life. Then we would go to move on to Disney, and I really wanted to be an animator. But when I went to school, they were like, "Hey, you're probably not fit for animation, but you're probably better for illustration." So they moved me into illustration instead. And that's where I really fell in love with my art. When I was actually going to art school, I learned a lot about the great illustrators of the Golden Age. Charles Dana Gibson, who is known for his line work and pen work and stuff, really, really inspired me in the very beginning. And of course, there's like Norman Rockwell and a whole bunch of other bigger name artists from that time that really pushed me into my art that I know now. But I also still have the influences from like Disney and anime and everything I was raised on. And it kind of just fumbled together into whatever my style is now.
It's funny you mentioned like your inspirations, and I can kind of like see like how everything kind of like I kind of see where you picked from each of your like for when you mentioned Gibson, yeah, Gibson, yeah. When you mentioned his work, I immediately remember your line work, like the whole flowy lines. I'm like, yeah, I kind of see the influences, how you got all that and you kind of shaped it into your own voice and your own style. Perfect,
Mhm.
stunning. I also wanted to ask, can you share a bit more on your so like after art school and then you graduated and you're like, okay, I want to do art. How did you kind of go about that? How did you decide like how did social media play in that? How did becoming self-employed? Why did you decide, okay, I'm gonna do self-employed? Why, just tell us a bit about the how that developed.
So it's such a weird story. When I was going to art school, I started Instagram because I needed to post my art and like push myself to get it out there. And that's when Instagram was just like the perfect social
The
media
good
when it
old days.
actually worked, when the algorithm wasn't so messed up. So I started posting, I think that was like 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. So I just started posting everything on there and it just kind of took off. So by the time I graduated college, it was already like I had a good amount of followers and I had the ability to make an online shop and sell things and work from home and, get illustration jobs that companies reached out to me. So it's crazy. I really didn't have to like jump into the game of trying to become an illustrator, because luckily out of the gate, I was prepared by Instagram and social media to already have a following and be able to make income off of that. And I kind of just kept going with it. And I started going to conventions and meeting people in person and taking really good job opportunities that helped boost, my following or just got my name out there in a more professional way. So it's so weird because when I try to give other people advice on like, oh, how did you start? What did you do? It's like, oh man, it was just the right time at the right place. I wish social media was as good as it was back then, because that's really what changed the course of my career.
No, definitely. I mean, jumping on, well, I'm gonna cut you there because you use the word luck. It's not luck. You made the active decision to start an Instagram and you posted like however, how often you posted, that's not luck. You put in the work and then the results came. Just want to say that. But yeah, I definitely agree that like the times are so different and like, especially with the industry in general, like things that worked 2 years ago
Mhm.
doesn't work anymore. Like, it's like people are
Oh yeah.
saying different things every time you open LinkedIn and it's a new strategy on how to get a job. And yeah, definitely, I totally agree. You just have to kind of look for openings, I guess, or just keep an eye out and know what's happening and, how you want to, navigate this entire space because times are weird.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It changes every month. I barely know what I'm doing now.
It's crazy, honestly. But regardless, the fact that you decided to make that active decision to start your Instagram is what made you who you are today. What that's literally why you have like over how many followers right now? Just like, it's beautiful.
Mhm.
And you posting your work clearly resonated with a lot of people. And that's the most important part. Like the fact that because right now, a lot of people are trying to, it feels like a rat race, right? Even
Yeah.
I struggle with this. Lots of artists, we're constantly trying to be seen, that we forget who we are or why we did this. And it's this whole trying to please the algorithm
Mhm.
that, but back then, it was
Mhm.
more authentic. And I think you see that a lot in like your work as well. Like when you make art and you share it and like it's genuine and it's not like for the algorithm. It's really beautiful, and I really hope we can, fingers crossed.
Get back there. Yeah. I know. Hopefully
Yeah,
something will happen and social media will go back.
hopefully. But right now, like I said, all that was totally worth it because now you're launching an art book. Oh my God, I'm so excited to say
No.
that. And where before we jump into the content of the book,
Mhm.
can you just tell us about the book? Like, what's the title? Let's start with the title. Can you share the title of the book?
So it's called Hellebore. It's based off the flower, the Hellebore. And it's going to cover, so I don't think I've put so much into one book before because it's going to have tutorials. It has a whole bunch of stuff about my past and like the growth of me becoming an artist, which I've never talked about. And I've never showed my horrible art before I went to college. And it's going to be in there. It's all for display. So I have a bunch of stuff like that. And it's also just a big collection and me talking through my style, my process, and everything I am as an artist as a whole. So it's a chunky book of good little tidbits that I wanted to share with everybody.
Perfect. I wonder if I may ask why, can you share a bit why you decided to go with that title, like Hellebore? Why did you choose that flower? Is there any reason in particular that you went with that title?
Yeah. So the self-published book that I did was called Nightshade because my art tends to be something really pretty with like darker undertones. So it's like, oh, Nightshade's really good for that. So when it came to making this book, I kind of wanted to go with that theme, but I wanted it to be more thought out. And so I looked up meanings of different flowers and everything. And hellebore is kind of a beautiful flower that is also poisonous. But it was also used like for what's the word I'm looking for? Um, oh, of course, it's gone forever.
No, it's fine. I totally get it. It happens a lot. It's like when you need it the most, it vanished.
I
Like,
know it's just gone
boom,
for
it's
good.
gone.
But it was used in like the past to, you know, have psychic renditions or kind of understand the future and stuff. And so when it came to this book, I think I understood more about me as who I am as an artist. I still am learning a lot, but I felt like Hellebore represents more where I was at the moment, being a little bit more understanding of who I am and my future.
Perfect. I think it's a very beautiful name. And like you said, very fitting for your art style, the beautiful women, but like kind of dark. And I always love that about your work so much. It's perfect, stunning. I love that mood, the atmosphere, how, yeah, perfect. I think it works perfect. Very fitting.
Thank you.
So can we talk about the title? Sorry, not title, the cover of the book now. So we've talked about the title. Can you share the cover right now? I don't know what it looks like. I have so just talk a bit about the cover of the book. Like, why did you choose that cover? The process behind it, picking it. Were there other options? Like, how did you decide on that?
Yeah, so when designing the cover, I went through a whole bunch of different like ideas, and I was like, okay, well, it has to speak out to my art completely. I have to cover everything that I like drawing into one, which is a lot harder than I thought it would be. But I took inspiration from a really old illustration I did of a girl with horns, and there's an anatomically correct heart like outside of her chest, and there's flowers going around it. So I really like that piece, and I think it represents a lot about my art. So I wanted to remake that into something that's like more beautiful and more. The first one was very sad and kind of melancholy because that's where I was, you know, at the time making that, but I'm not there anymore. So I wanted to create something that was like that, but felt more beautiful, more grown, more accepting of who I was. So that's kind of what guided me into that illustration for the cover.
Absolutely beautiful. I cannot wait to see it. Oh my God, I'm so excited now because I remember the artwork you're talking about, if I'm correct. Like, I think I remember. So I can't wait to see this new version of it that you talk about. So perfect. I'm really excited for that. And now we can move into what everyone is waiting for. Like, can you talk more about what we can expect? So I'm without spoiling it too much, just share a bit more. Like, give us like a sneak peek of the book. Like how, like, just tell us what you think you can share. And you know.
Without sharing too much.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so we have two tutorials in there, which are going to be fun. A traditional and digital tutorial, which I'm super excited about because I suck at making tutorials. I never do it because I'm always like, well, this is going to change. Like, I'm not going to stick with this. But I finally sat down and did like piece by piece of how exactly I go from nothing to an idea to an all the way finished illustration. So I have two tutorials like that. And then I do talk a lot about like even workflow. I go into like how to make money as an artist, at least how I went about making it into a business. Because I know a lot of people ask about that and they want to know, they really want to be an artist, but everybody tells them that, you know, you can't make money as an artist. And so I wanted to kind of explain and open up to everybody on how I did it. So it's pretty much, I'm not hiding anything. No gatekeeping at all in this book.
No gatekeeping
Just
here.
trying to
I love
tell everybody everything that I've gotten questions about before. I'm like, okay, here, this is going to be the book. I'll just hand it over if you have a question.
Perfect. I absolutely love that. What about, I was curious to know about like, because where you mentioned you're gonna be sharing more about like the business side of things, because when I see a lot of books, I think it's a topic that lots of people try like shy away from, like even in the art community, talking about making money with your art. It kind of feels yucky. But in
Yeah.
reality, it's like, how am I supposed to live off my art if I can't make money off my art? So I think that's amazing that you're talking about that in the book. I think it's something that especially now, there's so many, it's kind of weird times, like I said before. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that that's something that you're including in the book. So I'm really also looking forward to that as well.
It was fun to like go back and like see some old pieces that I probably hated at the time. And now I look at it and I'm like, man, that was actually good. Like, I'm actually proud of that one. That's a nice
Yeah,
one. So
yeah.
it was really fun doing that. I think the worst part was like trying to figure out what to write about myself. I hate talking about myself. It felt so weird to just like type up, and this is where I was born, and blah, 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 blah. Because I'm like, who cares? Do people actually
Oh,
want to
we
know?
do. I want to know.
See? But people do. And I was
Yeah.
so, I don't know, it was just such a weird experience for me trying to write things down about myself.
No, definitely. I can see, I think a lot of artists in general, we kind of just want to like be like, hey, here's my pretty art. No questions. Just look at the pretty art. I get that. But for me personally, one of something that drew me to 3D Total's art books and specifically the art of books is like the behind the scenes of the artistic journey. I think
Mhm.
more than anything, artists are drawn to each other's story as well as their art. I mean, the art is definitely pretty work, but like hearing about like how someone you look up to kind of started off and got to where they are is so
Yeah.
inspiring. It kind of makes you feel like I can do that too. And that's
Mhm.
why I think it's so important that artists keep sharing their story and why I think like art is never gonna die, right? Because like as long as everyone has a story to tell and everyone's story is different and unique, like it's just gonna thrive. Like it's not going anywhere, right? So
Mhm.
definitely, even though you said you struggled, I'm sure someone out there is gonna relate and you know, that's you're gonna probably be a reason why someone is gonna take off their art career and be like, okay, I want to do this as well. So yeah,
Mhm.
I'm glad you pushed through to the
I know it was a
yeah, definitely.
struggle.
Then before we round up, I wanted to also ask, what was your what not what was, what is your favorite chapter in the book? And also, what was your favorite chapter working, like what was your favorite part of working on the book? So your favorite chapter specifically, like what are you excited for people to see the most? And also, what part did you have the most fun working on in general?
That's a good question. I think one of my favorite ones, just because it like makes me laugh to look back on, is all like my old stuff and putting it on paper and being like, oh my God, there's gonna be people that actually look at this and so that was like really fun to put together. It was fun to like dive back into my really far past art and look at it and be like, oh, okay, well, I started somewhere at least. But I think the one that I like the most is going to be about kind of the process, like the creative process. It's really fun to, because I get so many questions on like, what's your style, what's your workflow, what's your process, and it was fun to like lay it out completely and just be so transparent on everything, and kind of explain that it's so personal, like the process and everything, and explain how I do it and be like, okay, now you got to find your own, like take off from this and, figure out what your process is and where your style goes and everything, and kind of
Yeah.
explain that, in a way that I've always wanted to explain it to people that I think is helpful. So I think I'm looking forward to that one the most.
Sounds very exciting to me if you ask me. I'm like I said, I'm so excited for this book, and I'm sure lots of people. For one, you already mentioned you've never really gone in depth about your artistic journey before. So for even if like not for the art itself, but for that reason, I'm sure everyone is gonna love the book and just, be excited for the book just as much as I am. So thank you so much. Um, one more question before
Mhm.
we wrap up the interview. What general advice would you have for aspiring artists who would like maybe they look up to you and they're like, I want to be where she is. I want to get there. What general advice would you give to them?
I guess my general advice would be just not quitting. And I know a lot of people say that, But I mean, that's really just all there is the people that you see that are successful just never gave up, no matter how, like, if something fell through, if they had a bad experience or if they got a negative comment or something like that. The people that are successful are just the ones that kept posting, kept showing their art, just being like, hey, whatever, and move on. Because that's really all it's about, is you're trying to get your art into the world, and find people that connect with it. And you will do that as long as you just keep doing it.
Definitely solid advice, especially now. Once again, I've said this like 3 times in the video, but we're living in weird times right now. So
Yeah, we
definitely
are.
just have to keep moving. You have to keep moving. But yeah,
Yep.
thank you so much for the interview. Thank you for taking your time to talk with us. And I am so, so excited for the book. So thank you. Yeah.